Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Hyams here. Bob Stewart over there. Bob, how you doing today?
Chad, what's
happening?
How are you?
Seahawks coffee cup?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't their season over like months ago?
Rude, Chad. Freaking really rude, man. You know what's crazy? So I did not, this is the first time in my life that I can recall, like since probably I was 7 years old, I didn't watch an entire Seahawks game all year.
Like on TV even, or like
anything? I didn't go to a game. This is the first time in many years I have not been to a game.
Right.
Except maybe I didn't live in Washington. But when I've lived here, I've always go to at least one game. I did not go to a game, but I didn't watch a Seahawks game on TV from end to end one time this year. I caught a few plays here and there. And then I kind of at the beginning of the year set out and was like, this is going to be a disappointing season. I'm one of these fans, Chad, like the payoff for winning each weekend on a Sunday is never it's never as awesome as how shitty I feel when we lose. You know, so it's like I'm basically watching to like when we win, I don't feel great. I just feel really shitty when we lose. And so this year I'm like, you know what? Like I don't want to do this anymore. Like I don't want to ruin my attitude on a Sunday, especially if we're going to be like 6-11 this year. And they ended up being okay, right? But I just decided like I'm not going to let a stupid football game like ruin my mood. And I've also realized over the years I'm incapable of not letting it ruin my mood. Yep. So now that I know it's going to ruin my mood if I watch, I just decided this year not to watch.
Bob, I will tell you, I don't think I have watched a quarter of football this year. I've seen some highlights. I'll put the game on for, while I'm getting ready for bed or something because you're on the East Coast. I don't think I've seen a quarter of football. Now I'm waiting for the Super Bowl. I don't know if this will have dropped before. After the Super Bowl, I will commit to because it's the Super Bowl, right? And you want the commercials. Yet, Bob, I make fun of you as a Seahawks fan. I'm a Giants fan. We were over week 1, right? All we got to do was watch Saquon go off to the playoffs and finally release our quarterback who we should have released the day we drafted him. But that's neither here nor there. That's not what Bob and Chad are here to talk about today. Bob, we just did an interview. Now, Dave does this to us all the time where we talk about something that's happened yet.
Maybe we'll exert a little bit of pressure on Dave. I don't know if we can even allowed to do this because he actually like controls everything, but maybe we can get him to drop this one right after the Kelly interview.
Maybe.
So that it makes sense.
Folks, we just interviewed, and when I say just, I mean Bob and I like just closed the window on it and then opened this window. We just interviewed Kelly Bagla, Esquire, which you will probably have recently heard maybe last week, maybe a few days ago. I don't know when you listen and when they drop. And one of the things that came up during that conversation, Bob, was if you're going to be a CEO of a company, be a CEO of the company. And she was saying, if you don't know what a CEO does, go on Google, go on ChatGPT. So I did that while we were in the middle of the call. I went on ChatGPT. I said, what are the top 9 expectations of a CEO? And got this list. Now, Bob, usually we prepare for a podcast, right? Usually I send you a topic or you send me a topic and we have a week to kind of go over it and maybe grab some. No, we're flying by the seat of our pants, audience, just so you know how this is going today, because we finished that one. Bob ran to grab coffee. I went to grab a bottle of water. We know who's focused on health and who's just staying awake. And we came back to a conversation on the expectations of being a CEO so that our audience can become one, Bob.
Yeah. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you run a business right now, like whether you decide to accept it or not, you are the CEO.
Yeah. And you might be the CEO of a business. You might be the CEO of your home, right? You're definitely the CEO of you, right? If we consider that, a lot of people don't think about it. You are a business, right? What is your reputation? What do you stand for? What is your slogan in life? Right? All that stuff, you are the CEO of you. So even if you are listening to this and you're like, well, Bob, Chad, I'm not the boss, or I'm not even the boss at home, right? Bob and I both understand that one, right? We're not the boss at home, but we're still the CEO of us. So you are the CEO of you, folks. So let's talk, Bob. These are in no specific order. These are the order that we're just given to me by ChatGPT because I asked the question that Kelly posed to us, and I just wanted to see, and we're just going to go through them here together with everybody. So, Bob, job expectation number one, top job expectations of a CEO who typically focus on leadership, strategic direction, and company performance. Number one, it gave us vision and strategic planning. Talk to me about visioning and strategic planning for our company, our family, ourselves, whatever that might be.
I mean, as the CEO, you're responsible for telling us, like, where is this company going? Where is this family going? Right. So to me, like, we're going nowhere if we don't know where we're going. Right. Like, if we don't have a vision, Chad, if we're not working towards something as a company, I guess we just enjoy hanging out each day together. I don't know. Right. But we're going to look back in 5 years, and without somebody guiding our vision towards where we're headed, we're going to be in the same spot 5 years later.
Yeah. Right. And it's vision and strategic planning, which means setting those long and short-term goals of our company. And I'm putting air quotes around company because, as I said, folks, I want you to hear company. Yet you might be the CEO or co-CEO possibly of your family. So, Bob, I mean, you and your wife have had enough conversations on what the vision of our family looks like, right?
Yeah.
You have long and short-term goals that you have set, whether it was you set them, she set them, you agreed to set them as co-CEOs. I want everyone to understand that it's not only your business. And then it can get down to personal, right? I'm training right now. I'm in the last few weeks of a marathon that I've been talking about. Nita had no desire to run one. That was me being the CEO of me setting those goals and having that vision regardless of anybody else. So it can be a multiple levels here, folks, that you are taking on that CEO role. Bob, when it comes to vision planning, when it comes to vision, telling, give me I mean, you work with Ben regularly. Yeah. I mean, I work with Ben, but you work with Ben much more often day to day now that I'm doing certain other things. He's a master at reminding everybody of the vision.
Tell me that here's what I would say about like vision casting, and I honestly, I hope that Ben would have this insight on himself. I think he would say that over the years, he wasn't always awesome at being out in front of the entire organization and giving them his full vision. A lot of times he would give us, enough of the vision that we're all motivated to go solve the next year's worth of problems or something. But he's always had this really big vision. And some of the most powerful rallying I've ever seen him do to our business, to our organization, is when he, in front of larger groups of the organization, articulates more of the full vision of what we're trying to build.
Yes.
I've never seen our groups as motivated, as bought in, as eager to go, do the work required to make the vision come to life, as I see them right on the other side of having heard Ben bring them into his big vision. So, I just think that piece is, it's the articulation of it. And he's gotten so good over the years at articulating it, right? But it's one thing to have one. It's another thing to get everybody that's on that, in that organization, right? You're the CEO, and that organization might be the family, but it's not just setting the vision, it's casting it so they can accept that vision and say, yeah, this is something I want to get behind and I want to be a part of.
Yes. Bob and I aren't here, Bob, I don't know, 450 episodes later, still doing Win, Make, Give because we just like talking together, right? We're doing this because there's a vision behind what Win, Make, Give can and will become as we're working towards it. And that's why we keep doing this 450 episodes plus later. And then now and then we get those wonderful posts that we've seen on social media, about how we've had an impact on someone's life, or we get the private message that just fuels us to keep going. But you have to be casting that vision and setting those long-term and short-term goals. That's job one of a CEO.
All right, job two. And look, in a lot of huge organizations, this gets passed off to a CFO. But
Yep.
the reality is most of us on listening here don't have a CFO. And so, responsibility number 2 is profitability and financial oversight. Like, you're responsible for the money and making sure that the company has enough each month to pay the bills, make sure that, we've got the right amount of revenue coming in, Chad, that our expenses are under control. And, I just said in big companies, a lot of times you have a CFO. We have a CFO in our world. Ben still and Chris still are involved in this piece, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're constantly coming to our team. They know exactly what our expenses are. They're asking us to reduce that portion of the budget by 10%. They know what the expected revenues are, and they know how seasonality impacts those things. And we have budgets for different departments, right? This is all stuff that at the end of the day makes sure that let's not get it twisted, right? Ben says this all the time. Like, we are in business to make a profit. And
Yes.
if we're not, we should go do something else cool, like save the whales. That's Ben's joke, right? If you're a nonprofit. But most of us need that profit to continue to run the business next month. So this is a massive part of the CEO's job. I will tell you, in some of the businesses that I've worked with, coached with, consulted with, one of the worst places you can take your eye off the ball is right here, Chad, because you can take your eye off the ball here for 2 or 3 months and then look back and go, holy crap, we just lost $20,000. We're into our reserves already. Like, what's going on? I'm experiencing this right now with one of our kind of CEOs in our world, where she had taken her eyes off of the ball for like the last 3 months. And now as she looked back at it, she's like, oh my goodness. Like, and
I just had that conversation this morning with a CEO that I have the pleasure now of coaching, that he took his eye off the ball. And we've been looking at some of the numbers, and he just realized that he just cleared up over $500,000 worth of expenses over the last year by cleaning up these mistakes that go right to the profit, right? And you said it, in a large organization, you might have a CFO that shows up, right? That chief financial officer. Yet when push comes to shove, it's still the CEO's heads on the block. When the money, I don't care what the CFO does, right? Yes, the CEO is counting on that person to do what they're supposed to do, but it's still going to be the responsibility of the CEO when the buck stops there.
I can't look.
Needs to be blamed
unless you do something proactively about this. Almost everybody listening has some expense on every monthly expense that just rings up on your credit card, and you don't use that thing. And in a business, that can get really out of control. Chad, we a big part of what we do in our world on the day-to-day at Place is we partner with CEOs to help them run a more efficient and effective business. And I'm all these years later, I'm still in some ways a little bit shocked by the things I see on the expense lines of their P&L, where you're like, tell me about this. And they're like, oh, I'm not sure about that one. I'm like, do you pay for that yearly or monthly? And they're like, I'm not sure on that. I'm like, well, are you using that still? And they're like, I'm not sure on that. Like, so, it's not just like, where's the money coming from? That's an important part of it. It's where's the money going? And both of those are the job of the CEO.
Bob, I will bet 75% of our listeners right now have a music subscription account that they're paying money to that they don't use, right? They still have Spotify and they haven't opened it in ages, or they still have, Pandora or whatever it is. They've got, I'll almost guarantee that there's music subscription that they just pay so little for, they pay no attention to, and they don't even realize it's coming and going. You're absolutely right.
If number 2 on this list is your challenge, go take the Well series. If like at home, this is your challenge, go take the Well series.
Amen. winmakegive.com/wealth, folks. Go listen to it. It's a 17 episode series we did with Ben, where we really break down how you make more money and make more of the money you have. Great point there, Bob. All right. Job number 3 that came up on our list is leadership and team building. So, Bob, job number 1 was creating the vision and casting the vision so everybody can hear it. Job number 3, we're starting to look at inspiration. It's not just saying, here's the vision. It's saying, let me inspire and guide my leaders to help make this vision come true. because now we are into that leadership and team building piece.
It's interesting that ChatGPT just assumes that all organizations want a culture of accountability, innovation, and inclusivity. And I guess we could assume that, Chad. I don't know that
Bob, it might also be because ChatGPT knows me.
Oh.
So maybe it started to say, okay, Chad, here's CEO definition to you. So that word accountability is going to show up right away.
Look, we could do a whole, we could do 10, 20, 50, 100 episodes on leadership, and we've got plenty of episodes on leadership. I think right here on this one, I'm going to focus on the team building side of this. Like Ben would say, of all the jobs over the years that he's given up and leveraged out, finding talent is still a job that he commits time to every single day.
Yes.
And he's doing that in a long-term environment where he's just getting relationships with people that he might want to be in business with one day. He's doing that very particularly when we have a specific need to fill. He's going out and finding or trying to find the most talented individual to fill that need. I think team building, now this one gets a little bit challenging to maybe think about how to extrapolate back to the family, but obviously on the leadership side, we could really lean in there on the family. That
I'm going to easily tie it in, Bob, because it's interesting how you read the words team building and how I read the words team building. You're replacing, I believe, not to put words in your mouth, you're replacing team building with recruiting.
Okay. So you're thinking,
right? So
you think it means like building up the team we have inside the building already.
There you go, right? I mean, look, you've got to be one of the longest running, right? You might have just beat me into the world of Ben Kinney, right? I think you were possibly working with him just before I was. So you've been one of the longest running people that's been there. And Ben has built that relationship with you. And he's built that team around you. And he's got that leadership team that he goes that extra mile with or does that extra stuff for. So in this sense, I'm taking team building as the old, I don't know, was it the 80s, right? Do trust falls. We're going to go on this tree climbing thing together. All that crappy stuff we used to all think built a team. But a CEO's job is to make sure that board, make sure that executive leadership team is truly a team. And I think then it becomes very clear how it works at home, right? That's you, your wife, your boys, building in that team relationship. And then when your son shows up to become part of that and he's not there as much, or grandma and grandpa come in, CEO is building that team so we have each other's back and we become an interlocked force because together we'll go farther.
I love that. All right, number 4, operational excellence. The CEO is responsible, Chad, for making sure that the operations of the organization are excellent.
Sure. And again, Bob, you mentioned earlier, finance, we could have a CFO, right? If our company's big enough, we're going to have a COO, right? Chief Operating Officer, who's going to be focused upon the operations. Yet again, buck stops here. It's always going to fall on the CEO for it. When we're talking about operational excellence, what are you hearing that the CEO is responsible for in there?
So this is a perfect example here. And look, technically, David Wiggs is our president at Brivity, but from a practical perspective, we could.
And we love David Wiggs, right?
We could call him the CEO of that line of our business or that leg of our business. And look, he at the very end of the day, David doesn't go out and like build the process that's going to be excellent, right? And so I think about a lot of different processes around here. There's our cancel process or our save process. There's our onboarding process. There's our sales process. There's all these different things, right? And his job's not to build those things necessarily, but his job is to make sure they're amazing. And so one of the things David is awesome at is inserting himself into that operation and then working with the person ultimately responsible for that operation being excellent and helping them make it excellent if it's not, right? So to me, this is, as the CEO, are you willing to step into the fire and go and see how things work, right? Are you willing to run a test transaction in your world and be the person that goes through the experience of what your client's going to experience with your people? Are you willing to go sit in your waiting room and then go into the doctor's office or the doctor back waiting room for 50. Like, is that, if you went through the process of the procedures that your customers are experiencing, like, is there room to improve them? And Wiggs is so good at constantly being in the thing, because how can you know if it needs improvement unless you're in it?
Brilliant, right? Brilliant, folks. Now take that home, right? You've got those systems at home. Are you having efficiency, right? Are the kids getting the beds made or the dinners, whether that's meal prep, all that stuff? It works in all areas. Great point, Bob, on operational excellence. And a CEO is tasked with making sure that's happening, or at least overseeing somebody whose job it is to make sure that's happening at the highest level possible. The next one I like on the list, ChatGPT shot it back at us as stakeholder relations, right? And this is one of those things you were talking about, I almost hear earlier. It's making sure that there are strong relations between investors, board members, and this is in the true business sense of a CEO, right? Their job is to make sure there's good relations. In a CEO of a company that's not necessarily run like IBM, Apple, something like that, big company, it's still to make sure that there's the relations between customer, investor, employee, and make sure that they're representing the company properly. One of the things that Kelly said on the last call, right, was they had a dress code. So they're creating that company representation of they're always wearing red because that's the color of the company, and they're dressed a certain way because that's the way the company needs to represent. A CEO's job is within and without to make, and I don't mean without, I mean outside of, to make sure that those relations are strong with the proper people.
Yeah, I mean, look, as we look at the list of like what type, who are the stakeholders, right? We've got investors and board members, which again, you don't tend to have in a smaller organization, but everybody has customers and partners, right?
Yep.
Like in our world as a real estate agent, who are our partners? It's the lender, it's the home inspector, it's my stager, it's my photographer, it's all these people, right? And I got to make sure that they're showing up, doing their best work, make sure that I'm vetting them properly as I'm going to introduce them to my customers. Just making sure that all of the ancillaries around your business, those people are taken care of. Absolutely the job of the CEO.
Who are those partners in the home life, Bob? I'm just going to put you on the spot. You just whipped off a great list in the real estate industry since we have so many people there. But I like, I love taking all these lessons and bringing them home.
I'll give you a few that we have cleaners that come to our house. We've got our landscaper that comes here every other week. Out at the investment Airbnb property, we've got the cleaner lady that cleans that. We've got a handyman out there that shows up if the smoke detector is not working, or so it's those kind of people.
It's like kids.
Yeah, we got a babysitter. That's another partner that we definitely have. We've got grandparents that sometimes play those roles, so they become stakeholders.
I just want to put you on the spot. I knew where you would go in the list you would probably give me. Folks, I want you to hear that when we talk business, every one of these sessions, you can easily transform over to personal. And when we talk personal, you can very easily transform them over to business. All right, Bob. So we've got vision and strategic planning, profitability, financial oversight, leadership, team building, operational excellence, stakeholder relations. We're 5 in. We got a few more to go. Next up, decision-making and problem solving.
Yeah. I mean, look, when I think about this one, Chad, I think 2 things here. On the one side, I think like as that CEO, you have to teach your people how to make decisions similar to how you would.
Great point.
Right? And so I think Ben has done a good job over the years of trying to, like, I feel there's still some decisions that I'm like, I'm going to gut check this with Ben, right? More and more, the thing that I kind of feel is the right way to handle that thing is in line with what he thinks. Most of the lower level decisions, though, like he's given us the decision-making prowess, and he believes in our, sound decision-making, that most of we make those decisions ourselves.
Yes.
But, when I think of a family here, though, I think about like we're trying to help our boys become problem solvers, not give them the answers.
Yes.
right? So that I don't know. I don't think a CEO. And by the way, Ben doesn't have all the answers always, but he's really good at helping you. Like he asks the right question to help you, get to the answer. I think the second little bullet that ChatGPT kicked out to us here, the ability to analyze complex situations and provide solutions that balance short-term needs with long-term goals. A lot of times that does come down to the CEO,
Yes.
right? Because I might, then this has happened multiple times to me where I'll go to Ben with something. I'll be like, look, we need to go build this thing right here. And the reason is because it's going to solve this problem. And a bunch of people are having that problem right now. And, and not knowing the long-term goals, the answer is, yeah, clearly we need to go do that. But he's like, yeah, but I want to build this thing first because that's going to then allow me to build this other thing. And so I got to get that done before we do this so that we can then start working on that other thing. Like that long-term outlook oftentimes is only, the CEO is sitting on that. So they have to be actively involved in problem solving often.
That's a great point. And Bob, as the CEO in your house, whether that's really you, or which we know it's not, we know it's your wife, right? There's the long-term goals of your boys going to college, possibly. They're not making decisions when they're 7 years old that have
That
anything
one's
to
not
do
a
with.
possible in our house. Our CEO, who is my wife, will have no other answers than our boys will be attending college. So
There you go, right? And at 7, they're not making any decision that would wisely lead to college. They're leading to the decision of when do I get candy, right? Or what do I just do for fun right now? And that CEO sometimes has to be the one that says, no, this is why you're going to go do your homework, because we're going to get grades that are going to help you get the scholarship, that are going to help you with whatever that is. And why you are, okay, we're going to go practice and we're going to dribble because you want to play and okay, great, right? It's the CEO has that long-term vision that while, yes, they might help others with decision-making and problem solving, again, they have to be the one because they're the only one who's seeing all the pictures. They're the one who hears what the CFO and the CEO are saying. And at the same time, they're not talking to each other. They're both talking to CEO. So CEO has to make those ultimate decisions, which sometimes can be difficult, folks. That's the job. That's why you take it on. All right. Next on innovation and adaptation. So, of course, we have to, as a CEO, adapt to what's going on. Bob, in the real estate industry, you mentioned it earlier, we have a lot of people in that the market changes, right? Things happen. I mean, I don't know how many people I've talked to about, years ago, they didn't even think to do this or they didn't think to do that. Or now the market goes, you have to be ready to adapt. And as a CEO, you're going to get fight from change from people. Yet the CEO has to be the one who turns that boat. It doesn't turn quickly, but they have to be the one that's turning that boat and saying, no, we're going this way, folks, because adaptation demands that we go that way. You're not seeing what's out there. And of course, innovation of saying, we got to get ahead of it. And what if we came up with this new thing? This all falls on the CEO. Agreed?
Oh yeah, I mean, I just think of Ben during COVID, and we had to adapt. Like you couldn't show houses in person for a while, and there was just like so much, right? And so it doesn't always happen from technology, and I think the trap here is to say, oh well, I use this CRM, and I'm sure they'll keep me innovative or what. It could also be adapting. And sometimes the adapting, like the real estate market in 2023 and 2024, some of like the hardest real estate markets in the history of the United States, right? Like the number of sales happening was just very low, 3.9 million, when normally you'd have about 5.5 million, Chad. And you haven't had that few number of sales since like 1995. The adaptation, the adaptation that was needed there wasn't a technological solution, right? No. For us, and what Ben brought to our CEOs, who then would cascade that down to their people, was you have to adapt with more activity. Like somebody's going to sell 3.9 million houses still, and if it used to take us 34 conversations to get to an appointment, it might take us 50 now, and that's what you need to adapt to, right? Sure. So it's not always technology that needs to be built to help us adapt. Sometimes it's somebody just needs to tell everybody that we got to show up and do a little bit more work than we had to do last time to get the same results.
Right. Now, Bob, if I broke down what your job truly is, or was at least, right? It's a trainer. That's your ultimate, right, description of your job, probably. I was a trainer. Ben was a trainer, right? This is what our job really was. COVID forced us as CEOs in our own worlds, in our own families, in our own businesses, and in the business we were all in together to adapt. What did we launch basically right at that time? The podcast. Yeah. Right? We couldn't get out there and teach. So how did we do it? We came to you through the podcast. I couldn't travel and teach when COVID came. What did I do? That's when the book came out, right? That's when I wrote Achieve Your Apex. But I was like, I can't go teach. Let me put it down on paper for them instead. Folks, the CEO is the one who leads that adaptation. Sometimes we have to innovate and go in a completely new way. And sometimes we just have to be aware of what changes we can make. And the sooner we make them, the better. Bob, number 8, love it. This is where your management. Wife is absolutely the CEO of your family. Crisis management, because shit hits the fan, and then we truly see a CEO step up.
Yeah. What do they say? Never waste a good crisis. Ben's a big believer in this, right? Like, I don't know. Like in the prop tech space, which is where our kind of major business would sit from an investor perspective, it's a prop tech. And like, there have been a lot of companies in the last year going under. Like, it's a crisis in prop tech right now. Ben was in front of that by 6 months, if not a year, right? COVID became a crisis, and like before it had even hit the shores of the United States, Ben was like, "This is going to be bad."
Yes,
and
he was.
knew that we were going to have to manage something over the next. Originally we thought probably 3 to 6 months, right? But it became, in some of our states, 2 years.
Yep.
So yeah, you are the person that when these things happen have to step up. Sometimes that crisis management involves really hard decisions, like having to lay people off. But when we had to do that for the first time ever in the history of our company, but we didn't get ourselves to a spot where, by the way, a lot of other companies did not make those hard decisions, Chad, and then they had to lay everybody off. Right.
Correct.
Or they didn't make those hard decisions, and then they were selling to Ben and Chris on pennies at the dollar. So yeah, a huge part of the CEO's job is to recognize crisis as it's occurring, and then to take steps proactively upstream to do something about it.
That's a great point right there, right? Take steps to do something about it. Folks, we all have a crisis, a car accident, sadly, right? Do you go into panic mode, or do you lead crisis management and figure it out? We lost our luggage. We missed our flight, right? This is where it comes in at home with a CEO, right? You recently talked about your wife changed jobs. Well, that means for a little while she was without one. Crisis management, okay, that's going to change things around the house. What's that going to look like? How's that going to alter things? Okay, folks, CEOs, again, it can be at home. It can be somebody gets sick all of a sudden. We have to manage the crisis. It can be at business, something as massive as COVID comes along and locks us down, changes the way the world functions, or it could be as simple as a competitor just came out with this product, right? Or this just happened. Be ready with crisis management.
I'm snickering to myself here because, I in my head, I think I'm pretty good under pressure or in these crisis scenarios. But the reality is, I'm probably not. I'm thinking back. I recently was doing a live training thing with Ben, and I left the building. I had to leave early to go catch a flight, and I left the building with the clicker to the presentation overhead thing, and just walked out, got to the airport. And they had this big session that was they had a guest in there, so they weren't going to need it for the next hour and a half, but I was gone with it. I called my wife. I'm like, I think I'm going to miss my plane. I got to take this thing back. And she's like, hold on, moron. Do this instead. She's like, call an Uber when they get there. Just ask them to take it back to the location. And so I was like, okay, that's a really good idea in this crisis that I'm in the middle of, that my brain was too flooded to even consider what my options were. And so my wife is the crisis manager.
Amen. Hallelujah. We all knew it. It wasn't a question. All right. Vision and strategic planning, profitability and financial oversight, leadership, team building, operational excellence, stakeholder relations, decision-making and problem solving, innovation and adaptation, crisis management, and Bob, number 9,
brand and public representation.
Tell me more.
I mean, you're the person out there in the media, on the YouTube video, behind the Instagram account of the company, or you're the face out there essentially representing your brand. I think over time, right, you get the brand gets big enough and you hire somebody and that's their job. But, if we were to think about.
Really? Because if I asked you right now to name the CEO of Apple,
so I was just going to do that. I was just going to say, and still that person likely remains the face. Tim Cook, right? Elon Musk, Bill Gates. Like, even though he's not at Microsoft anymore, many of us would still think of him as the face of Microsoft.
Right.
So yeah, it's, you're the person out representing the company. And the reality is, in most cases, nobody can do it better than that person.
No, probably not. And when someone else can, the CEO gets fired.
Yeah.
Right? That's when they come to Steve Jobs and say, you're out from your own company. And then, of course, bring him back years later. Folks, being a CEO is important because you are one, right? You might not have that title on your card. It's not about the title. How many times has Ben said on a podcast episode or to people, you are the janitor to the CEO, right? You're the dash that's in there. You go from picking up the paper that someone threw and missed at the trash can all the way to making those decisions and representing the company. So it might be a company of one. It might be a family of 2, 3, 4, 10. I don't know. It might be a business of hundreds. It might not be. But each and every day, you are the CEO. And those are the duties and job descriptions that the CEO brings to the table. Go out there, make that impact. Share the episode because somebody out there is a CEO and not thinking about it. And until our next episode, as always, do good.